in this millennium, in the first millennium, and why it is called the golden period of Indian history. So it's a new dynasty coming up that we are going to. So the theme and the trust. So where are we going with this information? And there are three parts that are very important in each of the presentation. One is what is the theme I'm talking about and where I am leading you to with the details and evidence. And the third thing is the conclusion part. Last time I omitted that, but this time we will build up why it is relevant for today's to know this thing, all of this information. Why is it important for us? So again, I have mentioned it so many times before. History is not a solid record of political exploits. Who came, who defeated, what were the manipulations behind that? On the sideline, we mention all that. And obviously, it is the king or the emperor or the head of the state who ensures the march of the culture, development of culture, and march of civilization. So, to that extent, these things are relevant. Otherwise, it is not so important. So, history provides a glimpse into the past. So, we are going to be living in those times, and it will give us an opportunity to find that given the current situations, is there any guideline for finding better solutions if similar situations arise? So, acquisition of skills for critical thinking. So, since it is a teaching course and for students, so the teachers have to do some critical thinking while linking past to present. This is the most important part. Otherwise, history becomes the most boring subject when we were taught and even after generations. So again, learning from the past mistake, finding solutions. Does the past repeat? That is another question. Past does repeat because humans are a species which do not critically examine things on a broader level or in the proper context. So, it is like hearsay or okay, we know it, and that is where it is going. So, speculation. So, to that extent, we ignore that history repeats. We are at the same juncture every 20 years or so, the cycle comes up. Every century, same situations arise. So it does repeat. And do the socio-political systems evolve for the better? We should learning lessons from the past, but we don't. So when the kings, this is the thrust, when the kings follow Rajadharma and promote arts and sciences, the people follow suit. So they also try to emulate, and it gives a new energy to the development expressions of art. You see, it is one thing being artistic, and it is another thing to create with your own imagination artistic expressions, which may be sculpture, frescoes, any of those things. So, sources of discussion. So, civilization highlights what are the sources of discussion. This is important because in the history books so far, taught globally does not give a bibliography and where they took the material, secondary sources or primary sources or lack of sources. So, and they get it vetted from some community member and they say, voila, it is authentic. Some Indians have approved. And so we go to the coins. For Gupta period, coins have a lot of coins have been found in Haryana, in Nepal, and even north of Magad. So, and all of them have not yet been deciphered. Archaeological Survey of India has found it and kept them. And gradually they are releasing some of the conclusions, the pointers. Uh, and then there are clay seals, and then there are inscriptions from the Gupta period. Inscriptions are very important because you may not find the clay seals, but inscriptions, which is engraved on the stone, it is history written on stone, in stone. So nobody can deny that. So we have to learn to show those stone inscriptions. So there is a one at Allahabad that is rock inscription. Then there is Iran inscriptions. All of these are different. Actually, when they were digging up the Sapta Sandhva region between Sindhu and Saraswati and right up to the Ganges, they found, while digging up the traces of that civilization, they found a whole lot of other dynasties' legacy and artifacts. So there are also several other rock and pillar inscriptions in Mathura, Udaygiri, Maroli, and they describe the reign of Vikramaditya, Kumar Gupta, Skanda Gupta, the whole line. It started with the Chandragupta first, and then the next was his son Samudragupta, and then, Chandragupta second, who is known as Vikramaditya, and Kumar Gupta and Skanda. And gradually, by this time, again, the complacency, the peace, the prosperity, everybody takes everything for granted. And the vigilance is like minimized. And they are not afraid of anybody because they are having a very successful empire where people are happy. So lack of vigilance and complacence on the part of the people, the subjects. So that is what has happened during all these subsequent decades and centuries in the second millennia, that Indians, Hindus, have become complacent. You see, since they could not alter the situations, they stopped even thinking about it. So as if, their mind has become numb and insensitive to any kind of humiliating situation. And that continues even today. So ignoring is like, sitting on the fence and not watching. Sanchi stone inscription. Gadwa stone. This is now in the Madhya Pradesh area, which shows also the extent of their empire and accounts of foreign visitors. So a lot of people came to study in Udaygiri University, and Nalanda was established, and there are many other places, Ujjain, where they were students were coming from all over the world. And world history mythology, I call it mythology, says that Sorbonne was the first university of the world in France. So that is the extent of knowledge which the writers have, and they pass on to the generations of students. So Chandragupta was a small chief. He was reduced to that kind of situation where Magad was quite, it shrank to just a small uh, chieftain. So that where now Magad with Patliputra used to be the center of empire, but at this point of time, about 4th century BCE, this CE, this was a very small place. So then he married the princess of Nepal, and half of that Nepal empire, which included northern parts of Magad and the northern parts of what today is called Himachal Pradesh and parts of Haryana. So now it has expanded, but it is still a small uh, kingdom. Then he defeated the Lichis and added another chunk of territory. So in this way, from a small nucleus, he expanded his reign to include what is UP, Bihar, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, parts of Madhya Pradesh, and even parts of Gujarat and Maharashtra. So despite his small kingdom, he proclaimed himself the Emperor of Madhya. At that time, it was not fully contiguous. He did have parts of this, and that was the nucleus, which has expanded around Ujjain and around Ayodhya and around Patliputra. But it was still a small kingdom. He proclaimed himself the emperor of Magad. And this was, how sovereignty is maintained when there is one head controlling several states or several straps or vassals, and any word will do. So, with his tact and vision, he comprised and unified. So, this is now an expanding power, displacing other Shakas and Nagas and all of those who were threatening to challenge Magad. So he was an ambitious general, Samudragupta, his son, and even during his father's reign, he went in all different directions. And he defeated many small kings, even large kingdoms. So, but then, that he called it Dikavijay, which means in the old days, Mahabharata times, the Arjun went for Dikavijay, which means he was going from kingdom to kingdom to see who accepts Yudhishthir as the emperor. So this is Dikavijay. But what he did was that he returned the kingdom to them and to the defeated kings, but asked them to be loyal to them and give tributes. So, in other words, there's, and that is a very important point that we have to make. No matter who won, who became the vassal, who paid the tributes to whom, the socio-political life went on evenly and exactly without turbulence. So this is very important. So even though there are political upheavals, the cultural continuity is maintained. And the wider the area, that is not important. What is important is that across this Indian subcontinent, the cultural ethos expands to different other areas, spread of dharma. But basically, the diverse tapestry of the culture remains the same. So this way, when he conquered Kalinga and Chambal and Kanchipuram, as far back down, Kanchipuram, people became prosperous because so much money is coming from the smaller kingdoms. So the victorious king then returned to his capital, Patliputra. After the reign of Shuka, they say that this is the first time he unified uh, almost the entire Indian subcontinent. He was an efficient and multi-talented ruler. Uh, Somehow or other, history books, even the ones which we read by Ishvi Chandra Prasad, uh, that was the name. So um, they have not mentioned all of his qualities which gave impetus to the to the public, to the artists, the craftsmen, and the painters, and all of the literary figures. So he was an artist, he wrote poetry, he loved music. So if he entertained all of those people and gives royal patronage, people will be very creative and they would feel that they are being appreciated. So he also used to have literary and religious discussions with learned people, and some coins even show him with Veena in his hand. So because of his personal accomplishments, art flourished. And this is a quote from Vincent Smith. I'm so happy that if Indians did not write anything great about him till today, somebody has written. And his book is called Ancient History of India, Oxford University. So by a strange irony of fate, this great king, warrior, poet, and musician conquered nearly all of India, and whose alliance extended from Oxus to Ceylon. This is the western part. And it is not even known to historians. And this is a sad situation even today. Where are we going? The question arises when we are teaching history and we are thinking about the past. The next question is, where are we going? Are we shrinking as a Hindu Rashtra, or are we expanding? Or are we giving away? Really, without question, without being asked. So these are relevant points, that there are people who are unifying and promoting culture. There are people who are destroying the culture, Indian culture, and replacing it with all kind of foreign mixtures. And the languages are corrupted. Some of the dialects disappear. So this is all because some people are innovative and they rejuvenate. Some people divide and get away with all kind of turbulence and turmoil. So he expanded and consolidated. This is now his son. And there are legends and legends about Vikramaditya because he was one of those persons who would go incognito around to see how the people are living uh, and find out what they are thinking about the emperor and the administration. So there are several books written about they call it legends of Vikramaditya. So expansion, consolidation, he destroyed the vassals, subjugation of smaller kingdom, and Maroli iron pillar inscription, Udaygiri inscriptions. They show pillar inscriptions, engraved military victories of his conquerors. So during this period, Buddhist pilgrims came, merchants came, because when the trade is flourishing, they don't exchange horses with camels. They also exchange ideas. That is how the spread of the Indian scientific discoveries took place uh, in the Asian, Eurasian areas. So during this period, so traders, merchants, ambassadors, so the Rajdoot from far off corners of Mongolia and China, if they are coming, that means they feel secure and they have really a desire to learn about the birthplace of Gautam Buddha. So the most notable among them was Fahian, and he left a journal. So that is a good source of history if anybody cares to uh, dust the pages of that journal. So he says that it took him 6 years to reach India. And many places he encountered all kind of problems and difficulties. But once he was in India, even the peripheries, uh, he found peace and life without any molestation, thievery. These are the words in his book. When I am reporting, it is a secondary source because I am taking from the first hand writing. He traveled from Peshawar and Tamerlipti in eastern Bengal. He covered, that shows that he covered the entire Ganga Valley and Panchayat, all Punjab, Haryana, and Ganga Valley, all the way to Bengal. In his own journal, this is what he mentions. And I think this is something for those people who make us, who wants us to believe that India was always a conflict-ridden place, social conflict between this and that person, all kind of things. And they should be, this is one page about socio-economic conditions at that time, or all through the history of India. As I said, that no matter who the king was, socio-economic conditions almost remain untouched by the turmoil. So this is what he says, that there was no abuse, or if everybody has everything, nobody has any incentive to. And then all three dharma traditions, they teach contentment. So whatever we have, we have. And more than that, probably we don't need. I mean, except for a few exceptions. General trend is that people are contented. So it is because of dharma as well that we have that kind of socio-economic atmosphere. So he did not notice caste conflict, you see, or special favors given to the Brahmins. Equally, Brahmins were respected, Shamanas were accepted, shrines were made for Buddha side by side. There were temples of Hindu devas. So people had complete freedom to choose whichever way they wanted to pray or not pray. You see, here people say, you don't believe in God? Oh, what will happen to you? You see, atheist is considered as if, they should not exist on the planet Earth. Whereas that is also that you think the divine uh, is non-existent, it is zero. Still, it is subset of the entire infinite Brahman. So that is the philosophic background in which, around which the art is expressed. So people had complete freedom. Inscriptions show all that. Cities had large populations and people were happy. People did not have to go to courts or register their households for property taxes. So criminal laws were just fines. Uh, but of course, um, if you are doing some kind of treason against the government, that was a whole different level of a crime. So farmers were taxed. There were free hospitals, charitable institutions all over the land. You see, these institutions started much, much earlier. If there was Dhanvantari and Sushira and Charka before this era, then that means the hospitals were there. And there was, since they did not charge any um, fee for seeing the patients, that means they are charitable and somebody is giving money for sustaining them. They are government supported. People did not kill creatures and there were no butcher shops. So Fayan talks about the glorious glory and lavish living of the kings and the decorations in the palaces and like that. Now, this is the visual map. A friend of mine, Ananda Sharan, Dr. Ananda Sharan, he gave me this map. So this is Samudragupta, and this is, down below, coming to uh, Kanchipuram, Kalinga, Kanchipuram, Tamarlipi, and this is Patliputra. So this is the Gupta's empire. And this is empire of Chandragupta. So he let go of this area. They still remained vassals, but they kind of not collect the considerable part of the empire. So up to this area, this is now past Gujarat and past Vindhyachal mountains, and this is the empire of Chandragupta. So Nepal was not part of it, surprisingly. Whereas in the person who started the dynasty, he had this area annexed. So I'm not sure how did they lose that half of territory. Maybe some other Lichavis again started asserting, and by that time, Chandragupta, Vikramaditya ignored it. So this is the map. Gupta rule is considered classical period of Indian history. And that part is important to stress for the students, emphasize. So just make this as a separate uh, listing of all the contributions in various fields and ask people, make flyers out of that and put it in the pocket so that anybody who challenges that India was a barbaric country and the British came, it was an unequal society and, blah, blah. And then the Mughals came, brought equality of all the people on earth. They don't even recognize equality of men and women, let alone any other person. So that nonsense, the web created by all kind of theories and assumptions, and just kind of, floating hearsay. So those kind of things have to be destroyed. That Newton is the father of geometry. Why Newton in 16th century? Whereas we have it, astronomy so advanced, space science, and the word, Sanskrit word Khagol Shastra is mentioned. Bhugol Shastra is mentioned in the earlier Sanskrit text. What does that mean? If you don't know about the space and the Brahmanda and the stars and galaxies, then that how can you make the astronomical predictions? So, notable achievements in the field of architecture, frescoes, attics, inscriptions, caves, rock temples, linguistics, literature, and under these headings, we can show the accomplishments. So, and then there is grassroots. This I keep saying that the grassroots democracy continued no matter at the center or nave of the empire has gone through some kind of war or change of dynasty or something else. So the expansion, shrinkage did not affect the grassroots. That panchayat system is still continued. The administrative pattern at best, which was at the time of Bharat, as early as, uh, Mahabharata times. So administrative pattern continued whenever there was Rajya Dharma was accepted and followed. So the king had several titles, Maharaj Dhiraj. This is again, Maharaj is a common word used for the king. Param Advatya, yani most supreme without a doubt, without any duality. And then he had several government departments, and each had a in charge, separated. That brings us to the part that there is not only accountability, there is responsibility. That this head is the responsible for that particular branch, and he is accountable for that. So each wing of the army was under a separate commander. So this is again, several regiments are there, and there is one in charge. But overall, there was the Senate. And then this is what was added during the Gupta period. An officer responsible for war and peace. That where we are negotiating an agreement, international, it was considered outside of the kingdom, with the allies or with the foes. So his title was Sandhi Vigrahika. You see, making allies, making deals and agreements. So the empire was divided again, like Mauryans called them Pradeshika, and in Gupta period they were known as Uparikas, which is again state level. If you have that kind of vast kingdom, which includes at least 10 of the modern states, obviously you cannot have just one head. You have to have uh, the state chief minister or whatever you call. So these governors of the provinces were usually from the royal family, the princes, and it was hereditary. It's like, Bharat's son Takshay was given the Kekaya part to rule, and then his son and his son, his generation, continued to occupy and be a kingdom of that era. So it is something like that. So provinces were divided. Now this is economic division, Vishayas and Vishyapati. So now we are coming to this is a political hierarchy, and this is now economic hierarchy. There were economic rulers, occupational guilds, each kind of craft, and they had a chief. And then they also had a union. So occupational guild is something like today's trade unions. And they played a role in promoting their own art and expanding, promoting the trade, domestic as well as with the out of the subcontinent, and they played a very important role. So part of the Varnashram There was a chief artisan, chief merchant, chief scribe, all kind of chiefs were there. And over and above was the provincial chief, governor, and then the Maharaja. Now, short list. Navaratans, they say Akbar had in his court 9 gems. Before Akbar, many people had 9 gems or even 20 gems. So a short list is Dhanvantri. He was a physician, very noted physician at that time in charge of hospitals and expansion of charitable hospitals. And this is not the Dhanvantri that is mentioned in the uh, in previous times. Um, the during Samudra Manthan, and Dhanvantri appeared out of the 16 treasures. So this is not that Dhanvantri. This is a later day. In fact, Dhanvantri is now considered, a Vaidya. Hmm? Somebody who gives advice, medical advice, and the other person says, "Are you some kind of a Dhanvantri?" You see, it is a synonymous um, with a Vaidya. And this was a Shapanka, or hard to pronounce, a Jain ascetic and philosopher. And this is a very, very famous Sanskrit grammarian and poet. And he made the Amarkosh, the first uh, treasury, Shabadkosh dictionary, and that was prevalent after that. So this now, what is the difference between the Sanskrit one and this Amarkosha? That this had Pali and Prakrit words also, because we have evolution of other languages also and evolution too. So this has survived all these millennia, and it has a vocabulary of Sanskrit roots and how other languages they develop from that. So the book has 3 volumes. It is called Trikand, and it contains 10,000 words. But using those 10,000 words and the tattoo, you can create billions and billions of words by adding prefix, and suffix. And this, the example of train, the Hindi word is lo path gamani. So ga is the root word. Gaman is something moving in motion. And lo, the metal track, path, lo path gamani. So what they did, gum added a suffix, added 2 prefixes, combined the words, sandhi, and the word comes out. So you can, there is no limit to Sanskrit vocabulary. He tried to create a dictionary. He defined itihas as Purva. Many people call it Purva Paksh, meaning the earlier perspective. But Purvrat is a better word. And Vetal Bhatt. Now, there are so many stories as children that we used to read. Vetal Katha. So it is, these are from this book, Panch Vimanstika. So, I mean, even today, without knowing who wrote it, uh, Vetal is, a person who wrote. And then there is Gatakpara, Kavya Niti Shastra. It is endless list. There are quite at least 50 more that could be added, which requires a whole book about the uh, 9 gems. So Varamira was an astronomer, worked on astrology, on arithmetic. Vararuchi was a grammarian. Vararuchi seems to be pretty, common name because there was Vararuchi in Dhananan times. There was another in the Kushan times. So mm, either it is some kind of lineage or family cool name, not sure. So he wrote on various subjects. So the intellectual people, philosophers and scientists, if they are respected and they get a royal patronage, they will flourish. So culture is the background, the whole fabric, and each part of that, as expressed, is art by itself. It can be expressed in music, in paintings, in frescoes, or in rock mountains, or inscriptions and pillars. You name it. I mean, it can be in any kind of thing. So another gem was Kalidas. Everybody has heard the name. Might not have read the books by him. So Malvika Agnimitram, that was for the Shunga dynasty, and then Vikrama Urvisha, and then Abhijnanam Shakuntalam, and his poems Kumar Sambhav, Raghuvanshi, and his famous poems are Meghdut and Ritu Samhar. So Abhijnanam Shakuntalam is translated in English language, and it is called Sanskrit classical literature. But others, yeah, this Kumar Sambhav is also translated by the same group, but it does not have the same flavor. So unless you keep the Sanskrit book along with the translation, you understand, make better sense of it. Because the translator, they miss the ecosystem of that time or socio cultural, the emotional experience of people. If they lack that experience, the writer, they cannot capture the essence of the culture. Now, Aryabhatta. This is a book which is not found yet, the manuscript. And his discoveries are mentioned in Brahmagupta, later mathematicians and astronomers. Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya, Bhatt Utpal. And some writers believe that Aryabhatta, yeah, this is another kind of thing I had to mention, that Aryabhatta borrowed from the Greeks. What Greeks? Greece was a small city states, like a combination of several islands. You see, so where is the knitting part? So there were thinkers, but then it is not that they were promoting those ideas outside or developing. If you are still in an atmosphere where the general feelings, the knowledge system, basic knowledge, the general system is the assumption that the earth is stationary and the sun moves around the earth, you are nowhere to comprehend the spherical uh, measurement of spheres. So, and this gentleman, Ibart, he mentioned that Aryabhatta found Earth rotating on its own axis. This is the original from Aryabhatta. It did not require any Greek to validate. He might have been the first of the first or one of the first, which means prior to that, if Shunya was there were others prior to that, but not anything to do with Greece. To expound the principles of that system. And he says that others later on improved on that. But the basic knowledge system of arithmetic and geometry, it was existent, and Aryabhat further added to it. So his achievements calculated the length of 1 year to this. Previously, it was uh, uh, to one part, yeah, 0.2 or 0.3. And this figure is even used today. He determined the planets are spherical, which were also known before. Bhugol means that all the other planets which are orbiting the sun, they are also gold. He made a good estimate of the Earth's size and rotation around its axis. He discovered that other planets moved around the sun and lunar eclipses and how they are caused. The old Sanskrit Sulabh Sutra, which is much earlier book, mentions the value of pi and the diameter of a circle. Otherwise, they could not have constructed the fire altars where the base is a square and the inside is the circle. So that kind of thing, and having the same area, that could not have been possible if this knowledge was non-existent. The pi and how to calculate the diameter. So Aryabhat later worked on this thing, the formula of pi, to 3 point something. So other famous mathematicians are Varamira and Brahmagupta, who Brahmagupta quoted and mentioned about Aryabhat. So Brahmagupta wrote books on astronomical trigonometry. The school of astronomy was in Patliputra. Later, when the capital of India shifted to Ayodhya and later to Ujjain, all the astronomers and mathematicians moved there. And when Ujjain was the target of various invaders, then it moved to Kerala. And it is still there. Nalanda University. I didn't write anything. Why? Because everybody knows there was an Nalanda University which was destroyed by Alauddin Khilji, and that was the replica of the syllabus that was taught in Nalanda University. It is the Mahesh Yogi University in Iowa. They are using the same model. So when I looked at the list of subjects, it looked like, as if I'm reading from an ancient university, their syllabus. You see? So that was school level. But college level, higher level, Vishwavidyalaya, or university level, things were more advanced, and Buddhist school of philosophy based that. So it was one of the Fahian came and studied there for 4 years. And by the way, Nalanda University, the government of India under Manmohan Singh decided that why not we replicate that Nalanda University. So they did make paper castles. It was on paper in Nalanda University, building not far. It was supposed to be later on built in Bihar. But at the time, when the Nalanda University was created. Uh, there was no ground level existence or geographical existence. So Amritya Sen, the economist, he was the chancellor and the founder president of the university. And then Manmohan Singh's two daughters were the mentors and teaching online courses. Manmohan Singh's daughter and Amritya Sen, they live in America and they were the chancellor. And the billing that was given to the government of India was monthly salary of 10 lakhs, 1 crore, and the maintenance. Maintenance of what? You are doing from a studio in America. So what are you maintaining? The sewage system or what? So that is why I didn't write anything. But one can find from any internet search engine a lot of information. And by the way, when the Auditor General of India under Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, uh, tried to, acquire all those accounts and audit it, they refused to give it. And of course, they had to, under the court order. And then it was declared defunct. Non functioning unit, paper existence. So, frescoes, rock paintings, and sculpture, intermingling of themes from Buddhist Hindu history. Many people believe that Ajanta caves were started during this period. Of course, later on, Rashtrakutas and South Indian, from Andhra Pradesh, they expanded in the horse cave uh, shape, in the cave in the horseshoe shape. So some of them, right here is Gautam Buddha and in Nirvan position, here he is a bhikshu, and then there is a sun temple, and then there is Shiva temple. You see, all intermingling. It's worth going to Ajanta and Ellora. Ellora is a rock cut temple of Kailash mountain, and it is the single largest chiseled mountain of that size. So, and frescoes are carvings and paintings. Some of the paintings are so beautiful, and I don't know what kind of shine they use, that even in the darkness, the golden ornaments of Yashodhara and the beads and the necklace, they are shining. And many artists from all over the world, they go there and study the art as well as figure out that why they were submerged in water and yet nothing happened to the paint. So that is a task to be done. Iron pillar of Maruli is a fine example of metallurgy. It hasn't rusted 1500 years. And this is in Maruli. So if the iron pillar was there and the emblem was Vishnu, then that means there was a Vishnu temple was there, which was demolished by Qutbuddin and made that minaret and masjid and whatnot. I wonder that they left this alone, or maybe they tried their best and yet couldn't do anything to it. And this is the Shiva temple, Shiva in yogic position. I'm just giving a couple of examples. Um, Otherwise, Ajanta can be written a book on its own, several volumes, as as an expression of art, as the philosophic thread, and as dharma tradition. So there are various ways one can study the artifacts. And if anybody says that, the 75 years prior to that, the colonial period, that India was a barbaric country and primitive and poor, why were you going there then? For fun, for looting the poor people? Nobody has ever heard that a robber went to a poor man's cottage. Why would you go there? You only go to invade those where you have ecology, sustainable ecology, tropical climate, and all that. And these were nomads from Arabian deserts. So they were educated and India was primitive. So it makes no sense. So what my conclusion is that these kind of lessons should be broadly placed on different forums and platforms. And they should be discussed even on general kind of discussions. Why? Because it is easy to add on learning. It is difficult to break the wall of ignorance. So you have to hammer and hammer and hammer. And at the end, the next generation says that, but historians say otherwise. Historians who? Now there is a clash. Who to believe? And that is why this has to be broad-based, eye-opening kind of uh, presentations or teaching sessions. That what you have to learn as teachers and parents, and what you are passing on to the next generation, and why the historical narratives are important if they are without speculation, bias, hypotheses, assumptions, theories, and originals. They are based on original sources. So these kind of things have to be rubbed and rubbed on the next generations, and it requires commitment and um hard work. Thank you very much. This is all for today. And if anybody